welcome everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Alyssa Vine. I'm the University Director of Credit for Prior Learning. Very excited to welcome you all to the first meeting of the Portfolio Working Group. And I am going to hand it over to Gladys to give a little OAA, higher level OAA context and kick us off.
Thank you, Alyssa. I am so excited to be here with all of you. My name is Gladys Palma, the Shriner Maker. Say that fast 3 times. I have the great pleasure of serving as the interim Senior University Dean for graduate and undergraduate programming, and really delighted that Credit for Prior Learning is under this umbrella. And have to give a shout out to Michael and Alyssa for all their amazing work in this area, and so delighted that all of you have decided to join us in this important conversation about portfolios. And for me, portfolios are instrumental to what education is. It is an opportunity for students to reflect about their learning and to really understand what their learning is about, and bringing, practice into the classroom and sharing what they know through this medium is absolutely wonderful. I think it is great that students can then use portfolio not only for credits, but when they go out into their careers. And a little anecdotal from my experience, I had students prepare portfolios and they got credit as part of a seminar program in writing, but also because it was specialized in the sciences, many of them used portions of their portfolio to help them get into medical school, to help them get into other professional schools. So I'm a real advocate of this. So obviously, one of the things that this group is going to be involved in is real dialogue about what it means for us, what it means for our students, our faculty. So this is completely aligned with so many really initiatives in CUNY. Obviously, the strategic plan, it aligns with that, really serving adult learners. Also, the Reconnect effort that many of you are aware of in your campuses, and also the new NISOP program, which allows adult learners to either come back to community college or start community college, and are getting scholarship dollars for this. So this is really an exciting time for Credit for Prior Learning, because really finally I think higher education is understanding the importance of making that bridge from experience to credit, and the portfolio is an exciting and dynamic way to do this. So thank you for participating. I hope that you continue in the conversation, and as we always say, and tell some friends so they can be involved in the conversation, because really this is a dialogue throughout CUNY in all of the areas in CUNY. So again, thank you, and thank you, Alyssa, for planning such a great event.
Thank you, Gladys. Appreciate you taking the time to greet everyone today. And the structure of today's session is going to be a panel conversation or a panel discussion featuring some colleagues from different colleges that already have portfolio models in place, so we can learn from them. But before we dive into that, I just wanted to share, I'll share my screen first of all. Am I already sharing my screen? Can we see it? Yes. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Great. And I wanted to just say, a little bit more about the structure of the working group. This is a totally optional approach. You can opt in for any of the sessions that we're holding throughout this year. And as Gladys mentioned, you can tell your colleagues if you see something that comes up on our agenda for one of the meetings that you think would be of real interest to someone on your campus who maybe wouldn't seek this out necessarily. We're really going to rely on our colleagues across the university to bring the right people to the to the discussion. Over the course of about 5 meetings, we'll see if we end up needing fewer or more, but we are really going to be looking to engage as many different stakeholders across CUNY as possible to help inform system level ways of supporting portfolio on campuses. We want to look at the different existing models, both those within CUNY and those beyond CUNY, to understand the strengths and challenges associated with them. We want to identify what campuses actually need to do this work, and in terms of policy guidance, in terms of tools and resources, and many different considerations. So we want to talk about all of those and really put those all out there to understand them. And we want to come out with standardized guidance, tools, and infrastructure that will allow all of you at your campuses to develop the right model for your student population. The list of topics and questions on the right-hand side of the slide are just to give a taste of the types of things that we want to come out of this process with a clearer picture of from our office's perspective. I also just wanted to share very quickly what the CUNY policy on CPL also actually says about portfolio assessment. And the actual language is that CUNY encourages its colleges to do this. So, I think that we want to make sure that encouragement is really accompanied by the type of guidance and infrastructure and tools that make it possible for you to do it. It also really points to the fact that colleges may opt to evaluate an award credit through portfolio through processes managed by an academic department, a program, or an office at the institution. So this can look different at different colleges, and we recognize that, and we want to make sure that whatever form makes sense, you have what you need to operationalize that. I included a few other policy details, most of which point back to what a lot of the people here probably already know and understand about CUNY policy. But I think that a couple of these key points that I really want to highlight, the fact that the determination about CPL is really made at the academic department level by faculty as content experts. That is true across CPL. I think it is especially true and important for portfolio purposes. I think that there are points here about fees and cost structures that we need to work through, and we admittedly have not addressed that aspect of this policy in a really concrete way, but we do intend to think more specifically about how to support campuses in that piece of this policy. I think also it's mentioned specifically in the portfolio section. If you've ever heard me present on CPL before, you have heard me say this, that CPL credits transfer on the same basis as though the course was taken at the original institution. So that aspect of transfer being an important piece of how CPL credits move with students around the university is also true of portfolio. So just wanted to highlight a few of those elements of the policy for us to keep in mind as we're talking through different aspects of this work. So we're going to move pretty quickly into the panel portion of today's program, but I wanted to, before I do that, I just want to make sure that that we're really clear going into this, that what you're going to hear about from the 4 colleges that are participating reflect some real differences in approach. 2 of the colleges, SPS and Lehman, have had portfolio options in place for students for many years. These are well-developed programs that reflect in some cases, I think SPS's program has been around for a decade. I don't remember how long Lehman's has been around for, but many years of work. And we have 2, one from York and one from BMCC, that are much newer models, in a lot of ways still very much in development and testing phases. So just to highlight that what you hear about today shows that this can mean different things at different colleges, and we want to support that, and we want to make sure that the program that you're able to design is the best suited for your student population. Two of the programs are sort of facilitated at the college level. And then one exists specifically within one academic department. And then one is really at the program level. And I should say the two at the college level would be SPS and York. And then the one at the department level is BMCC's example. And the program level is the adult degree program at Lehman. So just to give a sense that of the different ways that this can take shape. And I think that hearing about their respective ways of organizing and managing portfolio will hopefully serve as a good context for the conversations that we'll have throughout the year. At this point, I want to introduce our panelists. We have Pam Hinden, who is the director of the adult degree program at Lehman College. We have Holly Broadfoot, who is the experiential learning director at CUNY SPS. We have Lindsay Dempson, who is the student support program specialist at York College. And we have Revital Kaiser, who is an assistant professor in the Media Arts and Technology Department at BMCC. I am going to very quickly go through what these programs look like at a very high level before we dive into the questions, but just so that the audience today has a little bit more context and we don't need to spend quite as much time on sort of the high level process points. So at Lehman, students pursuing portfolio enroll in a 3-credit course. And this course is really structured around the Kolb model of experiential learning. And it guides them through the creation of a portfolio that can target a specific course, or it can target a degree program for blanket credit in that program. Faculty evaluators review the portfolio to determine if credit should be awarded. Students receive the 3 credits for the course, regardless of whether they end up receiving credit for the portfolio itself. And students can earn up to 15 credits for the portfolio in addition to those course credits. So again, just very basic information to understand how it works at Lehman within the adult degree program specifically. And Pam, correct me if I'm wrong, the portfolio program at Lehman at this time is available to students in the adult degree program, not students at large across Lehman. Is that accurate? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, at SPS, as I mentioned, SPS has had portfolio in place for more than a decade, and between 45 and 60 students take the portfolio course at SPS, and about 60% of those submit a portfolio. Holly, is that every year? Is that the number of students you generally have per year, or is that? Yeah, okay, thank you. So in a similar, but not exactly the same structure, students at SPS can enroll in a 3-credit course also that guides them through the creation of the portfolio. At SPS, the portfolios are done on a course match basis, and as students work with Holly and her team to really understand the individual student's background and decide what courses are appropriate for them to target their portfolio toward. Faculty assessors evaluate the portfolios using standardized rubrics to determine if credit should be awarded. And same as at Lehman, they receive the 3 credits for successful completion of the course, regardless of whether they do submit and receive credit for a portfolio. So at York, York has a different approach. I think it was about 2 years ago, the college leadership really enlisted academic departments to identify a course within their department that would be at least one course that would be portfolio eligible. And through that process of asking faculty to do that work of thinking about which courses would be best suited for students to develop portfolios for, they identified 26 courses across the college, across 10 academic departments. And in the first year, which I think was last academic year, they received 28 student applications for participation in the portfolio program. And Lindsay can tell us more about that as we move into the discussion. But to give a sense of the process there, departments decide what courses are available, and they create a rubric and criteria so that students know what the expectations are and they understand how the portfolio will be evaluated. Students receive those materials to support their portfolio work, and then they submit their portfolio via a secure portal with all requirements that that the department has outlined, and then the department evaluates the portfolio for approval by faculty to award credit for the course. And again, we'll get into more about how all of this works, but just giving you a sense. So at BMCC, this is an interesting and different model in that this is the Media Arts and Technology Department. If I understand correctly, they voted to add student learning outcomes focused on creating portfolios to almost all of the courses across their program. They created a departmental assessment rubric and a standardized I guess maybe I used those words twice on the slide here. Sorry about that. But basically created an assessment rubric for use to assess the content of a given student's portfolio. And they also have created a process. And initially, this is designed for the purpose of 4 courses that students could potentially pursue for portfolio credit. And they also integrated exam options as another way that students could further articulate their eligibility. So I think, Revital, I'm probably explaining this a little bit differently than you would, but hopefully we will learn more from you in this process. Do you want to say anything to clarify what I've said so far?
Yeah, we will talk about it. The portfolio requirement from multimedia students is probably a different issue than the CPL portfolio, but we can,
Okay.
you can clarify.
Got it. Okay. I see. Okay. So there are 2 rubrics, and one of them is geared toward the portfolio. Got it. Okay. And they're working on streamlining the process and really making clear the information that students need in order to successfully develop portfolios and for them to understand the expectations of the department. So with that, I am going to stop sharing. So now you have a little bit of a sense of how this works at 4 different colleges. And I am going to dive in with some questions. We've organized the questions for this session into 3 topic areas. One focused on program management, one on student support, and one on faculty engagement. I don't know if we'll get through all the questions, but we will try to at least touch on these 3 areas. I would really strongly encourage anybody here who has additional questions, that anything you hear inspires you to ask, drop them in the chat, please, and we'll also try to have time for Q&A. So we hope to make this a really engaged participatory process. So don't be afraid to raise your hand with your Zoom function or put a message in the chat at any time. I think that to kick us off, I think we'll start with the questions around program management. I think that, we heard a little bit about the process, sort of what the student goes through, but I wonder if somebody can tell us a little bit more about what the process looks like in terms of student eligibility criteria, enrollment, and registration. Maybe Pam, would you like to start us off with that?
Sure.
With
Hi, everybody. Glad to see you. So at Lehman, we do the portfolios a little bit different than I think some of the other schools, which is while we offer course match as an option, most of the students really prefer to do a portfolio that's more discipline specific. Likely because if they really have a course match, they could go take the credit by exam for that course, and that would be a lot quicker and easier than writing a portfolio for the course. And secondly, because many students say, I might be able to get credit for intro to business, but I've been in business for 30 years and I don't have a degree. I want to take the course, but we still want to be able to look at their overall experience. So what we do at ADP is through our advising process. All of my advisors understand what it's about, and we do a count of the students' credits. We figure out how many elective credits they'll have to meet after they do all the requirements. And if it's a significant number, we then begin to ask them about their background, their experience, and talk with them about the CPL course, if it's right for them. We also have quite an expanding list of credit alternative credit options now at Lehman, exams, certifications, courses at Coursera that they can take and that have been evaluated. And so the good news is that more and more students are getting credit for prior learning. The maybe still good news is that we're getting actually fewer students in the portfolio course, because where once if they needed 6 or 8 credits, the advisor would have suggested they take the course. Now it's much easier for them to get the 6 or 8 credits through our alternative credit options. And this is the first time I almost had trouble filling my class. So that's good, I think, because obviously the easier and the faster it is for students that is still academically rigorous and has integrity, the better. So that's how we do it. We go through an advising process, and I actually have a whole form they have to fill out for permission, because I need them to really understand how much writing it's going to be and make sure they're up for that, because we call it writing intense, but this one is like off the hook. It's just so much writing. But it's in the end, it's a great experience.
That's great. Thank you, Pam. I think that the role of advisors, is an important one for, I think, our group to really look at and think about, and also, yeah, understanding the student demand and the right way to meet that demand and make sure that we are connecting students with the right form of CPL is really important. Holly, can you talk a little bit about how students sort of determine their eligibility and step into that course at SPS?
Yeah, at SPS, students have to take our portfolio course, PLA 300. And that teaches them, much like other people do, using Kolb's theories, and they write to the course learning outcomes, so they're writing to a specific course. So now with us, PLA 300 is also a college options course. And so even though we are a transfer school, most students come in will need 6 or 9 credits of college options. So that's one of the reasons people will look at this course. They hear about it through advising. That is absolutely critical for advisors to understand. They also then will hear about it through information from my CPL department oversee. And so a student who's interested has to come to my department. We speak to them either if they have an idea of what they're doing through email. If not, oftentimes it requires a one-on-one conversation, looking at what they're doing, gauging how well they write. As Pam said, these are writing intensive courses, because doing a portfolio is basically a large paper with backup documentation. And then we set them up to see what course would be a good match for them. Then they take the course. After the course ends, they can continue working with that paper, and they will use someone in my office, either I or Sydney in my office, who works with the students one-on-one, to continually kind of see what they need, what's missing, give feedback, because they usually only do like a good solid second draft in the course. And then it's working with getting in touch with the right faculty assessor. We use Digication, making sure that everybody understands Digication, we can't use Digication as linked to our courses because of the way Digication is set up. So we have extra pieces with that. So the administrative back-end piece winds up being very labor intensive, frankly, from making sure that the right person is working on the right thing in the course, to getting it ready to be submitted, getting it submitted in education, working with the faculty person, making sure they don't have an issue doing the rubric, letting the student know the final grade, and then letting our transfer credit office. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the big thing. I don't know that, I think because it's a college option, that's one of the reasons why we have the numbers we do. And we've actually used to have a lot more. And much like Pam, now students have other options. So something like our information systems, if you were doing networking, we used to do a lot of portfolios for that, project management, a lot of portfolios, but now there are other like certificates, CompTIA certificates that people would choose instead. But yeah, I would say that's kind of the biggest thing is it's labor intensive, and I just add partly because you also are having to tell the students what portfolios aren't, because many students will come in thinking that I've worked in this job for 10 years, I give you a resume, and you should be giving me credit for that, because that's what they heard. So a lot of the portfolio is spending time getting people to understand what it is not.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, thank you. Thank you, Holly. Revital, do you want to talk a little bit about how students determine their eligibility for the portfolio opportunity in your department, and sort of what that looks like in terms of actually sort of getting from the point of interest and eligibility to getting the credits?
Yeah, so in the Media Arts and Technology department, the typical candidate for CPL that we envision has worked in the media industry and learned skills on the job. These candidates will have a portfolio of professional work, professional references, or credits. These are proofs of learning that we accept. We expect most candidates to fall into this group. Um, Another group of potential candidates have taken a course in a non-academic setting. There are a number of certificates offered in film, in graphic design, in UX and web design that do not award academic credits, so they don't transfer. We will need proof of completion and a portfolio of work that correspond to the work done in the course for which they request CPL, and that work is probably was part of the classwork that is done for that course. We will also allow candidates without professional references or documentations of course completion to apply for CPL, but these students will need to take an exam in addition to providing a portfolio of creative work. What I just described applies to most of our courses, for example, screenwriting and intro to graphic design. But for a minority of courses, we will require an exam from all candidates with an optional portfolio of work. Most people working in the media industries or looking for work in the media industries have already a portfolio with samples of their work. It is not structured as a CPL portfolio, but it's definitely a good start from which they can, with our help, develop a CPL portfolio.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think that it's a really interesting example of how in certain disciplines and certain departments there may be populations of prospective students who have sort of, or they kind of have the work samples that would fulfill a lot of the requirements, but then finding how to make sure that additional learning outcomes of the course are captured, such as through an exam, is an interesting approach for us to keep in mind for where it makes sense. Lindsay, do you want to tell us about the sort of how students demonstrate their eligibility for a portfolio at York, and sort of what that process looks like?
Sure. So our program here is a baby, so we're learning as we go. But so far, we've really left it, I don't want to say left it up to the faculty and the departments, because that's not right to say, but that's pretty much how it's been going. CPL here is just it's me, that's who it is. So to try to find students just within York, to try to go out and say, hi, where can we get the students that are eligible for CPL for portfolio is it would be hard, to just dive in, because I'm not an advisor by nature. So to have the courses that the departments offer, them being the ones that know, okay, these are the ones that we're going to offer for portfolio assessment. And then they are the ones who are advising the students. They really are the ones who know, oh, this student would be eligible for a portfolio. And then from there, usually we have them send them over to our office. And then we give them the criteria and rubric sheet and say, this is what the department is looking for within their portfolio. And then, then they submit it. And then if it's missing something, we send it back to them. We say, this is what you need to, I say, this is, what you, need, in order to fulfill the criteria that's listed, go over this again. This needs to be resubmitted. And then once it's completely fulfilled, you know, we send it back to the department. So I'm kind of more so like the middleman between the department in order to double check and make sure everything's submitted correctly. But really, it does fall heavily right now on the faculty and the departments to see where so the students, you know, who are eligible lie. That's the process we've come up with so far.
Yeah, no, that's thank you. Thank you for that context. I think it's an interesting approach. I think that portfolio does really require you know, the expertise of faculty from like a content perspective, but then also in terms of their own awareness of their students and which you know, I think that's an interesting different approach that that I think we can all learn a lot from, especially as you continue to develop and refine the model. Another question that I wanted to have regarding program management. I know Holly had mentioned digitation. I'm mispronouncing that, but I'm wondering from like a technology perspective. I know Lindsay, you had shared earlier with me that that there's like a secure portal that you use, but just wondering if each of you can give us a little bit of insight on how do students actually create the portfolio? Like what tools technologically are involved in that process on your campuses? And Holly, if you want to go first, because I mentioned education, and you can sort of clarify what that is and isn't for your purposes.
Yes, we use e-education, which is students are already familiar with it because it is used in other courses. Oftentimes, it's a way for students originally to make like their own websites, portfolios, but we have always used it for assessment purposes. But we use e-education, so students, we help them. They will upload their learning narrative. They will then upload whatever documentation artifacts go with that. The rubric is connected to e-education, so the faculty assessor can go in, use the rubric, make notes. The student can see that, but the biggest piece is then it's easily kept. So we can keep that for 5-7 years, and we don't have a bunch of paper portfolios that we're having to manage for accreditation and purposes. So that's and also, since we're an online campus, we needed to be able to have whatever faculty assessor wherever they live, wherever the student lives, everybody can easily get to that. But the how do we maintain these portfolios and the rubric scoring with it for years, that played a big role also in why we used e-education.
Thank you. Ravital, do you want to say a little bit about what that either looks like or you intend for that to look like for your department?
Yeah, so we do not mandate any specific portfolio platform, which is also the policy with our digital portfolios required of all students in the multimedia program. We do offer students the option to create a free portfolio site on the BMCC Open Lab, which is a WordPress-based publishing platform. We have a portfolio template there for our students, which can also be used for CPL portfolios. And if we see demand for that platform, we will create a dedicated CPL portfolio templates. Most of our students use other free web publishing platforms for their portfolios, such as Wix and Google Sites. In addition, we expect students with prior media industry experience to already have a digital portfolio of their work, so they might just want to keep using the same platform for their CPL portfolio. I think that having a rubric as part of the platform would be quite amazing. I'm just not familiar with Digication. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And I don't think we also consider the fact that we might want to keep the portfolios in our possession for a number of years. I'm not sure about that. But if we do use the BMCC Open Lab, then we do have the option to do that. Generally, we would like to keep the portfolio creation process as simple as possible. And for some courses, such as script writing, even a PDF that is made of all required documents could be sufficient.
Thank you. Thank you. Ted, go ahead.
Well, yeah, we have a couple questions in the chat. I don't know if we want to respond to that. Is dissertation available CUNY-wide?
Holly, do you know if that's a SPS specific like procurement tool, or if that's something that is available more widely? It's okay. If you don't know, I can also look into it and get back to the group.
Look into it. It may be, I'm trying to think, because I'm on the tech fee committee, and I think that is something we pay for, so that may be something that has been SPS.
Okay.
Double check on that, but it may be SPS.
Okay. Yeah. A few people are saying that that they have digication, or that yes, each college would have to get it themselves. We will look into that. I think that that is exactly the kind of I think question we want to make sure that this group fully explores to understand the potential benefit of having that potentially available more widely. I see. It's also a question. Actually, this is a really good question. I think it fits in well with the program management. So I will, Holly, I see you've answered it in the chat here, but preliminary info sessions or workshops to go over all of the options. Is that something that, and actually, Lindsay, I'll direct that question to you. Is there like a centralized, I think you said that most of the time students are finding out about it or determining their eligibility at the department level, but is there like a process by which you're sort of giving an intro to what portfolio is at York for students who maybe are hearing about it?
We don't have any like workshops or any I mean, I direct them to our website, but we haven't like developed any kind of like workshop yet or anything like that. I mean, I would be the one to run it, you know? So when I find the time,
yeah,
I'll get
yeah,
that'll
no,
be my next step.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting sort of question in the general picture of like, and I think it was Holly who was saying before that the distinction between like what portfolio is in somebody's mind versus like what it actually is for the purpose of earning academic credit, is something that probably needs clarification before students really understand if it's a right fit for them. So it's an interesting thing, I think, for this group, this university-wide group, to think about sort of like what are the entry points for students to really understand what it could look like. I would say, I think what I'm gonna move us to the student support questions, and I'm gonna ask for the colleges. So this would be SPS and Lehman, the colleges that have portfolio courses. What do you consider the most crucial aspect of the course content and process for students to end up with a successful portfolio? Like if that course, because one piece of context for this, I think that we've heard over the years that there are concerns about a credit-bearing course being sort of a central requirement of the portfolio process, especially at the community colleges where there isn't necessarily room for those credits in degree programs. So I think just to help us understand, not to say that the whole course isn't important and that the whole course isn't, a really pivotal part of the experience for students there, but are there certain aspects of that course experience that you feel are like really critical to making sure that students have the guidance that they need to be successful?
I can jump in. Yes, the students really need to learn how to write in a way that they have probably never written before. The Kolb cycle is very specific and very useful, but it's not easy to learn on your own. We spend probably half the course working on it, and I'm watching for each student's light bulb to go off. And thankfully, they almost all get it by the end. But it's a beautiful process, because what writing to the Kolb cycle does is it's the difference between a student saying, I have this experience, versus I can show you how I learned this particular thing. because I tried it, I thought about it, I realized it didn't go that well. I had to get some more help or info. Then I tried it a new way, and then that went better, but I still had to learn this other thing. And they use that cycle to describe their learning. And certainly in the days of AI, one of the things I love about that is when they write what they have learned using Kolb, there's no question that it was their experience. It's so clear and personal, and you could go through and you're going, oh yeah, I made that mistake once. So you can see the learning process. And of course, as Holly was saying, CPL is based on credit for what you learned, not what you necessarily did. And the way I get that out to my students is I ask them all, and they all always say yes. Do you know somebody at your job who does essentially the same job as you, doing it for as long as you, and they're really not very good at it? And everybody cracks up and says yes. And I said, that's why your resume is important, but that's not what you get credit from. What you get credit is being able to describe how you got to the level of expertise you are now. From where you first started, you didn't know how to do this thing at all, to now. That is what is believable, and that's what gets good credit. So we've thought about trying to put together an off, not even asynchronous, but like a course where students would kind of do it on their own. And between that piece, needing to learn this, how to write it, and also, honestly, Lehman students, even ones who are fairly far along, often don't have the strongest writing skills. And so I see a lot of nods. So really helping them learn to write in general, again, is critical for the process.
Thank you. That's good context. Holly, do you want to say, from your perspective, in addition to the writing piece and that Kolb, are there other aspects of the course itself that you feel are really crucial?
I would just emphasize the same thing Pam has said, that students confuse experience and time with learning. And I would say, like, even in a class, let's say if you had a class of 10 students, there will be 2 or 3 people who just get it immediately. It makes sense. They're writing their portfolio. They can do a whole cycle of learning. They can connect a course outcome. There will be, then probably like 5 or 6 students who you need to kind of keep working with them and giving them different ideas until that light bulb goes off. And then there are 2 or 3 students who you're really just they're having a hard time because they're wanting it to be almost like a mathematical formula,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it's not. But I say that, and I think some people bring up a good point, is like a lot of our students will do a portfolio for one of our courses, writing in the workplace, and the course outcomes are written so they're portfolio friendly. And so if you're a journalist, it works. We've had people who own a beauty salon at work, people who've been administrative aide, it works. But your portfolio is going to be different if you were someone in, let's say you were doing some multimedia where you were showing much more, and then maybe what you're doing is talking about what you were doing. But honestly, I don't know if we could have that many students doing portfolio if we were not bringing them through this credit course, or we weren't spending a lot of time with them, even if they did a non-credit on your own type thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think that, Pam, I see you have your hand up. I'll give you an opportunity to respond. Go ahead. And then I have want to pivot the question a little bit to Lindsay and Revital as well.
Sure. I just wanted to jump a little off what Holly said. I am the director of a program, and I taught the course when a faculty member got sick in the middle of it, and I took it over for a few years. And then thankfully, one of my former students, who then got his master's degree, I mentored him to take it over. But he's done so well now; he's a vice president at another school. So I am back teaching it this semester and next semester with the hope I'll find someone else. But all of this is to say, this coming week, I don't have class. because I'm going to do individual one-on-one appointments with all of my students. And thank God there are only 11 this semester, which is already a lot. But the amount, you just need to know this, the amount of time this takes is quite a bit. And you really need a way more support than we have at Lehman. And I also just wanted to add, in terms of portfolios, how they turn it in, we're old school, PDF. Students email it by PDF, and that's what we do. We then email it to the department.
Thank you. So I think one thing that I want to say sort of at large, and then to hear from the other panelists sort of on the like sort of the non-course approach side, is that I think that we want to try in this process this process of the working group to recognize that where a model exists that relies on a course and has always relied on a course, I think that is that's tried and true, and we know that is that's a direction that we can go. But I think that we also need to sort of keep an open mind and recognize that there could be other forms that kind of instruction and advising could take, and that I don't want colleges here who have already articulated to me in other conversations, or who have heard that the course thing is not going to work on their campus for different reasons. I don't want you to feel discouraged by this piece of the conversation. And I want you to know that we're taking all of this information in, but we also want to consider the possibility that that structure could look different. Revital, do you want to talk a little bit about sort of without a dedicated course approach in a discipline where the articulation of learning is very focused on sort of the work samples and that type of thing. When you hear about these courses, like what support or process guidance is your department able to provide to students, and sort of what does that look like, or what do you envision that looking like?
Well, so the CPL program in my department is still in the planning stages, so I cannot speak from experience, but without a dedicated portfolio course, it will be essential for faculty to meet with students and guide them through the process of converting their industry portfolio to a CPL ones that respond to the course learning outcome. Yeah, this is going to be a significant time commitment from faculty, which is feasible as long as the number of CPL candidates remain manageable. It is remain to be seen how many of them we're going to get.
And Lindsay, have you found so far in the first year you had 20 some odd students that applied for portfolio? What type of guidance and support were departments able to provide to them, or was your office able to provide? And what would you sort of say, like from a blue sky perspective, like what would you like to see in place eventually at York to support students in this process?
Well, I mean, to start, like for them submitting it, it seems as though the applications we get, the students really know what they're doing. Like when we get but they do, they submit the application, they submit their portfolio, and it seems as though they've already worked with the faculty, and the faculty really know their students well and are like, no, this is really going to work for you. And they're like, oh, okay. And then when they come to us, it's almost as like they get the rubric and the criteria sheet already having their portfolio prepared in either their mind or on their computer, like they already know really where they're going with it. And then their criteria and rubric sheet just seems to be like a checklist that they have what they need already. So it seems as though that they are discussing this with the departments way ahead of time before they're even getting there. And then they just are kind of getting it just to be like, okay, so I can submit this now. So it seems that like the departments that are really in it are in it. Because even though we have courses being offered from all 10 of these departments, that doesn't mean we're getting submissions from all of them, right? They're just kind of like, yeah, we're going to offer this course and we're going to hope that some students submit it. But I mean, down the line, it would be, wonderful to have like a real setup spot that would be like, oh, this is how, we're going to hope to, have a portfolio submitted, and we're going to have somebody here who can help you and help you walk you through it. And if you need the assistance, if, a student comes with a question and they need assistance, I'm glad to help them. But CPL is not the only thing that I do. all day long.
Yeah, so the question of scale becomes important over time. Christine, did you want to jump in with a question or comment?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Alyssa, you know, I always usually have to have some commentary in one of the presentations. I just wanted to share my opinion on, thank you everybody for speaking on the panel today. But one thing I've noticed with everyone that's speaking about portfolios on their campuses is everyone has spoken about writing and papers. So I'm glad, Alyssa, that you referenced different ways that actually encompass a portfolio. So a portfolio, at least for us at LaGuardia, is not always going to require a student to write a 5-page paper, right? Someone that's coming from the humanities, that's gonna, and depending on what they're bringing in, is going to determine how that portfolio is going to look different for that student. So like to us here, one portfolio can include the resume, the references, the biographical narrative that we have them doing. We've also had students do skills assessment tests, right? Like physically demonstrating what those skills are. So I just wanted to, I don't want anybody here that doesn't have much knowledge on portfolios to think that it is only limited to papers, because that's definitely, at least to us on our campus, not what portfolio is. We definitely use mixed methods depending, again, on what the student's bringing in, what the major is, and what the course is. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think that that again, it's like, you know, we have the tried and true model, which seems to be more writing focused, but then I think that that to consider different different types of skills and knowledge that students are bringing and the different forms that that takes, colleges should definitely feel open to the possibility that, I think, like at BMCC, where they're really looking at the students' work samples from their professional lives, that there, and you know, there's a lot of different types of learning that can be showcased through different the mixed methods. I think it's a good way to put it. Lindsay, jump in. Feel free.
I just want to second that we don't focus hardcore on like writing samples either. Again, like our rubrics and criteria sheets are made from the department. So the faculty, you know, they come together, they make them up and say, this is what we need in order to find that the syllabus and the learning outcomes are being followed for this course. We do have them submit like a personal statement to explain, you know, why they feel as though they meet what's being needed. But it's made up, we have all different types of documents that need to be submitted for all different types of courses. So it's very widespread. So again, the same thing.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Lindsay. Actually, I would love to hear, because I think York's approach of asking departments to identify courses is different, and it's really interesting to me. And I guess, what guidance did your office give to academic departments for identifying which courses would be eligible? Like, how did you sort of task them with that assignment from like a criteria perspective?
When we had a committee at our college that came up with the process, and it was made up of administrative staff, faculty, everybody. And we kind of said to one another, well, how are we going to go about it? Talking to the faculty about this, asking them for courses, because we can't just say, give us a course, because what would we get? But then we said to them, what in your mind could you see your students saying, okay, I have the knowledge already for this course. So when you're giving it to that, you know, when you're teaching and you what course do your students already feel as though they have knowledge in because they have so much background, you know, or what courses do you have students come through that you're like, oh, well, this course over and over again, I have students who have interest in business, but have already had have already have the knowledge within this course because they've been outside of the college and then come in and been like, oh, I've done this already. And that's kind of how we got the departments to be like, oh, I have one of those. Oh, I have one of those. And then it progressed from there. And then we ended up getting, we actually got a good amount of them that way. We did have, don't everybody think that it was easy, because it wasn't, because we did have pushback. So don't think that it was like, oh, they'll just freely give them up. But because we had departments that pushed back on it, but we did have ones that willingly were like, yes, we have those. So
yeah, no, that's interesting. Now we have a few minutes left, so but I want to make sure before we wrap up that I'm going to share my screen again here. So you know, before we go our separate ways for the afternoon here, I want to encourage everyone to I'm going to send this out by email as well. So if you're not in a position to, you know, grab the screenshot, and I'm going to put the link in the chat as well. Uh-oh, now I'm probably going to mess up my sharing. Hold on. Actually, hey, Ted, do you mind dropping the link in the chat for me if you have a moment? I basically, like, this is not, we're not looking so much for feedback on like the session itself, what you liked, what you didn't like, but more what questions does this bring to mind, and what did you hear about today that you want to learn more about, you want to see examples of, etc. Tell us that so that we can sort of cull the types of material and next steps for exploring all of this more deeply over the course of this working group's plans. So, you know, I think I know that there are some like demos of digication that I would like to see. There are you know, some references to different types of rubrics, you know, those, and I saw some of those questions in the chat, and I saw some questions that we maybe you know, we'll need to come back to about vetting of students and advising of students, and making sure that when they're pursuing this, they understand how it fits into their overall degree plan. Those are things that we definitely need to unpack in more depth. I will just say, is there anybody, and I may be missing with all my sharing and screens and everything, I'm not seeing, are there any final questions in the chat that I could address in our last couple of minutes here? Anything else that anybody wanted to flag that I overlooked? Excuse me.
This is Yvette Ward from McGavis College. I just had a quick question. I had to step away for a moment, so this may have been answered. Is there a maximum number of credits that any particular school actually say that one portfolio, they take the portfolio course, what's the maximum number of credits they can earn under that portfolio course?
So at SPS, our portfolio course is a regular 3-credit course. After that, any portfolio they do, since it's a course match basis, they would get the same number of credits as the course they are writing for. Most of our courses are 3 credits.
I guess maybe I didn't say that correctly. Not so much the course credit itself, but the maximum number of credits they could earn by doing the portfolio. So for particular courses, so if it's 5 courses that they see.
If they wanted to do 5 courses at SPS, they'd have to do 5 portfolios. Each portfolio is matched to one specific course. So you can't write one portfolio and then people read it and randomly assign credits for multiple courses.
Right.
That's how it's done at other places, but we've always done ours through CALE, Council of Adult and Experiential Learning, and that's the way they've always recommended, and the way they used to do all their portfolios when they had a national portfolio, is you just do it per course. So you're writing to the course learning outcomes of one specific course.
But how many courses can they do it for, Holly? Is it like 5 maximum, 10 maximum? What is the maximum?
What's the number of I think, is that what you're asking, Yvette? Like how many credits can be awarded through the CPL process? Is that what you're asking?
Exactly. And I although I said course, I meant credits equivalent.
Credits, right? How many credits can be awarded?
30 credits. Right. How many credits can actually be awarded? Thank you.
Through the CPL process, right? I mean,
one thing I will jump in and say is that from a CUNY CPL policy perspective, CPL credits cannot fulfill residency requirements, but there is not, from a university level policy perspective, there is not a limit on the number of CPL credits other than they cannot fulfill residency requirements. That said, if any of our panelists have like a max that's stated differently, feel free to jump in.
We have one at York. When we started CPL like our overall CPL process, we wrote into our that students can't receive more. CPL as a whole, anything, you can't earn more than 16 because it's kind of like the max of like about one semester. So any type of CPL at all, it's 16 credits. I don't know if anybody else, but that's what our committee decided.
At Lehman, the maximum credits for the portfolio is 15, 3 more for the class, but it's a total of 30 between portfolio and alternative forms of credit.
So some
Okay, thank you.
some different approaches, yeah, and some good opinions and notes and information that is appearing in the chat, which we will definitely save as part of the notes of this group. And we're at time, we're a minute over time. Thank you all so much. Thank you so much to our panelists. I feel like this was really informative for me, and I really hope that other people felt similarly, you know, as though this was a good use of time and a good start. This is just the start of this process and conversation. And please take a moment to fill out that questionnaire that we shared, so that we can make sure that our future sessions and additional work is treading in the right direction toward what CUNY colleges really need to make this happen.